Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. My name is Shelley Scalzo Brown, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of the Women in Construction event 2020. And I'm also very grateful to all of you for joining my session today, but who is it safe for? When I was about 22, I started working in the hazardous waste industry. A bit of an unconventional choice, but I'll circle back to that in a moment. I was handling all different kinds of assignments and projects, from emergency response work to chemical spills to industrial cleaning and construction of environmental remediation systems. I quickly got a lot of experience in a lot of different areas, including safety issues, which is often the case of emergency response and hazardous waste management, which are incredibly highly regulated industries. About a year after I started, our safety manager abruptly quit. There was no other safety manager in the company, so I thought the job was important and I volunteered for it. I wanted that job. I distinctly remember the vice president of the company being a little caught off guard by my initiative. And he really laid out for me what some of the challenges I was about to face would be. Namely, that I would be alone, that I'd be the only safety manager in the company, and that I'd often be at odds with my colleagues, trying to stop their work, slow down their work, or otherwise intervene. But frankly, I had come to terms with most aspects of all of that earlier on in my career. If I wanted to advance, being an outsider was just going to be a part of the deal. So I stood my ground. I knew that I needed him to say yes. You see, getting into this business and advancing in these roles was really a lifetime in the making for me at that point. Like many of you, growing up in the 80s, the decade of catastrophes, I watched the Challenger explode on TV with my second grade class. I also, a few years later, watched oil pouring into Prince Edward Sound as a result of the Exxon Valdez oil spill. The latter really got me. Aside from the news coverage, my dad worked in maritime transportation, and his company had the closest emergency response equipment available to help respond to that spill. He stayed on that spill most of the summer and into the fall. He'd send home photos of oiled birds and oiled shorelines, and we'd often talk at dinner about what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how he and many others in his industry were working to make the industry safer and better for the future. This included the formation of the environmental services industry, which I knew from very early on was where I wanted to be. So I went to college for environmental studies. I advocated for myself to get that big first promotion into safety, and later went back for a master's degree in public health. So you can see my determination that day was really about the path I wanted to go down. 20 years later, I'm still in this industry. I've slowly worked my way up from project safety to regions to the national level safety leadership roles. Today, I'm a corporate safety director for a national electrical contractor, and I've led safety in businesses as large as 2 billion and as small as a work crew of 3 or 4 people. I've worked in all different types of settings, everything imaginable, and now have global pandemic to add to my resume too. Throughout my work and experience coming up the ranks, I've seen and felt something very distinctive to my experience as a female and as a safety professional. The gender gap that we are all facing in a number of different aspects in our lives is also making us less safe at work. And here's what I know. Right now, safety incidents, injuries primarily, are costing the American economy about $6 billion a year. I also know that although we've had tremendous success reducing the number of workplace injuries, we're beginning to plateau. And when it comes to workplace fatalities, we're actually seeing reverse. The number of fatalities is beginning to increase. Our workforce, for the first time, is over 50% female, yet our safety professionals are only about 18% of all safety professionals that are working right now. Our government is about at the highest levels where we have policymakers regulating things like the environment, like our workplace, like the products that we use and buy are only 20% female. And finally, in our C-suites with 6% female representation, this is a very important part of safety because these organizations not only make decisions about safety for their workforces, but also decide how to safely operate in the communities and industries that they serve. There used to be no better example of how these dynamics played out than when we had an all-female spacewalk planned and yet had to cancel it because the astronauts, highly trained, highly qualified, highly invested in, didn't have the right personal protective equipment or PPE for the job. Unfortunately, our current circumstances around the coronavirus pandemic give us yet another example of how women are disproportionately affected by safety policies in their workplaces. OSHA identified that healthcare was the highest risk category to contract COVID-19, and healthcare is also over 80% female. But let's go back to construction. How does this look for our work sites and our workplaces? I want to start with stereotypes. And to do that, I'd like to talk about stop work authority. This is typically a policy that employers have, but it's also an informal kind of practice we use on work sites where we encourage employees, encourage workers to stop their work and speak up if they see something unsafe about their own work or the work of others. The personal risk taken by workers to stop work because of another safety concern is often riddled with fear of being wrong or branded in some way for doing it. People are less likely to stop work if they have greater unfamiliarity with the folks they share the site with. Stereotypes about women in construction play into this and feed this and make it feel more risky for women to speak up. These stereotypes include things like women being less capable, in competition with men, less committed, and it ups the amount of courage women need in order to speak up. We also know that women are more, when they do speak up, they're more likely to be interrupted and to have their ideas dismissed. Again, this dynamic ups the courage needed to speak up, and it increases the personal risk involved. We can't assume that this is appreciated by those enacting or supporting stop work or stop work-like policies. Looking at our most fatal industries, construction included, these are the last to diversify in a very meaningful way. The equipment we use, the processes in construction, the demands, the policies, even our training still very much reflects a male-dominated culture, one that AGC has even branded a macho culture. This presents barriers to women who want to enter the industry, stay, and advance. But it's also putting our male colleagues in an unsustainable position. And we see this evidenced by increasing fatality rates that I mentioned earlier, but also suicide rates and rates of substance abuse. Our most fatal industries are not the complete picture. Even our most well-diversified and predominantly female sectors suffer from the same blinders. Chemical and ergonomic exposures in healthcare and housekeeping are impacting female bodies in ways that we simply do not understand. And this is because our research is biased. For decades, we've subscribed to a male standard for conducting research and testing. This male standard, at an age of about 25 to 30, weighing in at 150 pounds and standing about 5'6", it's not just failing women. Research dollars have historically gone to male-dominated industries with a perceived greater impact on national productivity, while professions such as healthcare, housekeeping, teaching, and caregiving have been omitted from research priorities. And now, as a result, our hospital workers, predominantly female workforce, are more likely to be seriously injured at work than construction workers by nearly 3 times. another disparity amplified by the current pandemic. So let's talk about some solutions, shall we? We in safety, we're known for having this great set of glasses that we take with us and we go out to job sites and we look for risk and we take the opportunity to kind of dismantle and rearrange things to lower risk. So what I'm thinking is that we as safety professionals need to take these great glasses that we wear and turn them to find where this gender gap is showing up in our work sites and take the opportunity to change that. We need to look for where stereotypes are stifling contribution, where our cultures have driven women away and are overtaxing men. And we need to look for where our past thinking about safety becomes less about, is it safe, and more about, who is it safe for? When it comes to stereotypes, in safety, we are very clear about our goals. We're always talking about 0 injuries, 0 incidents. We train our employees on the safe behaviors they need. We shape their work environments to be as safe as possible. Yet when it comes to inclusion, we don't really do enough of this. We don't do enough to identify who belongs on the work site. In fact, we do the opposite. We hold on to language such as flagman, lineman, man hours. You can even see this type of language reinforced at the highest pieces of OSHA regulations. We hold on to signage and images that suggest that men only work at these work sites. And then we reinforce otherness by providing personal protective equipment to women that doesn't fit them and has never been tested for them, basically handing them a separate and lower standard of safety. Finally, we tend to think of injuries only in the physical sense, and we do very little in comparison to take on issues and protect workers from harassment, from bullying, from intimidation and violence. Where stereotypes persist or even encouraged at work sites, they make us all less safe. Let's treat inclusion the same way we do safety. Let's use our safety posters, our PPE, and our language around safety to reflect the open environment that we need to keep workers safe and to help them stand up and talk about safety when they need to. Okay, the culture, this macho culture that I mentioned before, it's embedded in some of our work sites, and it's really underlying the injury rates and the fatalities that we're having. Fixing this is going to be tricky. We need to take a look at why women leave the industry. And this has been identified in a number of places, but a couple ideas are unequal pay, tokenism, little opportunity for advancement, a hostile work environment, and a big one is a lack of role models. But we also know the other side, where we have these macho cultures, they result in higher rates of work-related fatalities, suicide, and substance abuse. So men will remain at risk in these high-demand roles where mental health is stigmatized, where family separation and isolation persist, and where, like women, they often face a hostile work environment. What I know from safety is that culture starts at the top. When the right values are selected, when the right policies are put into place, and the right activities are modeled and measured, culture will begin to change. To increase inclusivity of cultures, we need to be looking at the hiring, promotion, and compensation practices, compatibility of the work with caregiving responsibilities, should be investing in well-being and preventative health and wellness programs. We can start thinking about return to work programs beyond those that support workplace injuries, but how we bring people back to the workplace after they may have suffered a personal health issue or a personal family loss or issue as well. Finally, and probably the most exciting part of it, is thinking about how we can use technology and innovation to reshape our work sites in a way that allows everyone to access them. In safety, we've embraced things like scorecards, leading and lagging indicators, goals and targets, and we use those to measure the effectiveness of our safety programs. We need to be embracing this level of measuring around inclusive policies so that we can really see the effectiveness of these policies. My theory is that a true and authentic safety culture can't be achieved independent of belonging and inclusion. But we can't see how the latter affects safety until we're brave enough to start measuring it. Finally, let's take on bias in research and policy. Literally, we as safety people and as a construction profession, we need to fix this latter. There is so much untapped talent out there that we need to help innovate our way out of this injury and fatality stalemate that we find ourselves in. But to do this, we need to get women seated at decision-making tables, and we need to start including women in the design process for these solutions. To start, we can address where women are being kind of relegated to where women and where all talent is being relegated to lower level roles in traditionally female disciplines. And we can disrupt this by leveraging our networks, advocating for each other, and continuing to lead on safety wherever we reside in our organizations. I'm confident that as we design safety solutions for the future, people and include people with varying backgrounds, experiences, and abilities, the benefit will be universally felt. In these interesting times we find ourselves in, the new normal, so to speak, it seems like everybody is agreeing to disagree about nearly everything. But I keep coming back to this thing that I've learned through my path in safety here. This one true thing that I really find connects everybody, and that's their desire to feel safe and to belong. And where we can marry these two fundamental needs, we will be creating a better normal. Thank you so much.